Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. In today's discussion, we're looking at lesson 4 of our excellent essay writing series where you learn to write argumentative essay. And for discussion today, lesson 4 will focus on one specific portion of writing the introduction well. So to recap what we have discussed so far, when you are writing a good essay, you would actually have a foregrounding and positioning and a thesis statement. So this is our sample essay from previously. So for today's discussion, really what we're looking at is to look at the writing introduction, but more specifically just the first portion of the paragraph. This line over here, and you are looking at how you're going to build this up. So, and this particular line over here, which is what I call narrative opening, may not be the only option. So really what we're discussing today is to get you to consider, apart from writing and starting the essay by highlighting a narrative or a story, would there be other possible ways to help drive the discussion forward, to help, in a sense, put a good first impression in the minds of our readers and examiners as well. Okay, so that's why in terms of our recap lessons, when you're writing a good introduction for the essay, there are three elements to it: foregrounding, positioning, as well as the thesis statement, and we are focusing mostly on this for today. In lesson 5, as well as lesson 6, that is when we'll focus on writing the positioning and the thesis statement, so that things are all done in good time and it can be systematically shown and demonstrated to you as well. Okay? So when you are working on the foregrounding, you need to consider what is the purpose and the function of writing the foregrounding. So the first thing to recognize is that the very first line, maybe the first 2 sentences of your entire essay. You want to create interest and engagement in your reader. The reader has a aha moment, this is a good essay. When I see it, the writer, the student over here is really able to build up interesting beginning that lets me read more into it, makes me want to read more, right? So that's one. At the same time, and you're balancing the two, it has to be an interest element there, but it must also demonstrate the knowledge of it. So there must be some relevance to the question. There may be some attempt to create a linkage to the topic that you're discussing upon. So, which is why by balancing these two aims well, you hopefully can write and create a foregrounding in your introduction that would help make the discussion effective as well as efficient in terms of reading for your examiner and your reader. Okay, so when you're looking at foregrounding introduction, right, there are a few ways to drive the introduction. That's what I call a generic statement, a narrative, and a quotation opening. You can choose any one that works better. And in terms of accessibility and effectiveness, this is when things happen in a inversely related manner. Okay, meaning to say that if it's easier to work in the foregrounding, in terms of communication of ideas, coherence, it may not pay off that well. But there will be times when you are, in a sense, more concerned with building a main body paragraph, so you want to generate the foregrounding relatively quickly and easily so that the rest introduction can also be written with less time, with more speed. So for that reason, in terms of accessibility, writing a generic statement is actually very easy to do. So I put 2 ticks over here. But relative to your communication of ideas, it is just 1 tick, because everyone can do this quite easily with a bit of understanding and pointing out by teachers like myself. But you are doing this only if by default you have no other option. A better option is really to consider the narrative opening, right? So it's harder to build up, you need to prepare in advance, but relative to the payoff, it is better. And the same thing with the quotation approach as well. Okay, so going forward, within this next few minutes, I want to share with you ways of generating these 3 different types of foregrounding. And one thing you must factor in is that when you're writing a foregrounding, it should not be excessive. In terms of word length, you're keeping anywhere from 1 or 2 sentences to 3 sentences at the most, so you're keeping it within 20, maybe 50, the upper limit of 70 words. Okay, I caution against 70 words because bear in mind there's only 1/3 or one portion of the introduction. It is not an entire introduction, so you can't really be too obsessed and be fixated on only this portion. Okay, Ken? Right. So to recap, this was our complete introduction, and this is story opening. So it's like I said, 2 sentences, and we want to see how this will actually surface up, right? So when you look at foregrounding, bearing in mind the rest of introduction, in terms of positioning and thesis statement, right, you notice that it's actually, like I said, 1 sentence, 2 sentences, or long sentence over here, and that's really what you want to factor in. Okay, so generic statement foregrounding, right? If you were to work on this, so what you'll actually be doing over here is to relate this to our essay that you have with you, the sample essay. You recall, our sample essay, the question is parents have no right to impose their own values and beliefs on their children. Discuss. So all these samples are showing you in a while's time the generic statement, the narrative opening, as well as the quotation foregrounding. They will be referenced to this particular question and to fulfill the two functions mentioned earlier on, creating interest, engagement in your reader, as well as getting your reader to think more about the issue, right, to recognize that there is a relevance to the topic that you are building up upon. Right, so for your generic statement, how do you go about writing it? It's a one simple sentence with two parts to it. Number one, there must be some reference to the modern contemporary world. So just the phrase modernization over here, for instance, would be enough to get your reader to think about it. Some other possibilities of doing it, you can say in our world today, or with rapid developments nowadays. So the idea of contemporary development is critical. And the reason for it is let the examiner know that this student, right from the first line, is considering issues as they happen. So in a sense, you are keeping current with events, which is a very critical component of assessing a general essay's quality, as it were. Okay, and then there must be a reference to a question's key term. Again, that shows that you are on track, which is why you notice I put in the words parenting. Okay, as well as imparting of values. So if nothing else works, the generic statement is actually a chance for you to quickly state what is obvious as a point of departure, as a point of starting the discussion. And the critical thing to do is to always highlight that there is some form of debate, controversy, or discussion on society. Right? By doing this, you are demonstrating that there is a conversation that's going on even prior to and hopefully after the writing of the essay. Right? So it's actually situate your essay as part of continuum on this particular issue and discussion. So just by having a simple statement like this, you realize that what it does is to actually help your reader understand that you're keeping things as they were. You're demonstrating as something worthwhile to discuss, and that is why there's a point of writing a whole essay to begin with. So easily for any other question, if the question of public health that we discussed previously in lesson number 3, for instance, right, I can just say rapid modernization and changing societal expectations today, public health and how it affects us in various ways have been debated hotly by society, right? Notice it will work out well. Or the question is on the abuse of science. With modernization and rapidly advancing technologies today, much debate has centered around the use or the misuse of technology. You see, so it does not matter what the topic is, if you center on these 3 issues, modernity, the key topic term itself, followed by the idea of controversy or debate, you can start the conversation going, right? So that is why, in a sense, generic statements are relatively easy, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, once I point the way out for you. So hopefully this lets you see the value of using this. If you are pressed for time, if you are pressed for, say, thinking of writing the main body paragraphs more than focusing too much on the introduction, at least at the beginning, okay, Ken? So having said that, given a choice, if you do have a relevant story, then you can actually have narrative foregrounding. So the concept of narrative foregrounding is to highlight a well-known incident. So in our sample that we have over here, in our original sample essay, you are looking at the story of keeping out the Kardashians. So this is actually an example that comes from celebrities. Normally, a well-known incident that centers on celebrities, a historical event, or currently a hotly debated topic will be something that is, in a sense, immediately relevant to your reader examiner, because these are things that they read about, they've come into contact with on regular basis every day. So in a sense, create a story centered around a well-known issue so that way there is a more immediate buy-in between yourself and your reader. Okay. Try to then demonstrate that the story has a strong positive negative message. Maybe align it to your dominance view. So this particular story is very much about concept over the top antics. You see the dominant message. Okay, they try to score fame at all costs, and this sets up the discussion on whether is there a need for parents to impose values that are positive on children, for instance. All right. So really the idea here is that when you write a story or narrative opening, make sure that it's well known and make sure that it is there's a messaging behind it that is relevant to the point and the discussion for the rest of the essay. Okay, so that's for your narrative opening. Now for the quotation opening, you want to select a quotation from a well-known or respected authority figure. So the idea is that this authority figure serves as a way of substantiating or backing up your ideas. Or in some cases, if you're taking a more unconventional view, you want to later on debunk or debate this particular point of view and quotation by the authority figure. All right, so you want to interpret and link the quotation to the question's keywords. Same thing as with the generic statements opening. Again, demonstrating potentially the positive and negative effect on the reader and on society as well. So here you give a well-known figure. When you cite the quotation or comment, you want to do it verbatim or as close as possible original worded quotation to begin, because that's the whole point of quotation, to demonstrate that you're actually given enough thought about it. You actually memorize up to a point of quotation and you're using it to help back up your points over here. Okay. The second part of the foregrounding, or the second sentence over here, this line in black on white, is critical. What you want to do is to clearly and unequivocally state that this is actually relevant to your discussion. So you have phrased it in linking, and you highlight the main topic, the family, nation, and world together. What this does is to really create a sense that whatever is being said over here is relevant to your question over here. Okay, Ken? And you notice I added in the word parents over here as well to really create the impression that this is not just a quote in isolation, it's a quotation that has relevance to our question about parenting and the issue of our children. So then from there, highlight the, as it were, interpret the particular quotation. So where it's positive, then interpret it positively, it's negative, then interpret it negatively. So that's why the choice of quotation is critical. If you know that your main dominant views for the rest of the essay, your main body paragraphs, your introduction as well, is going to be negative, then choose a quotation that demonstrates humanity at its worst or at its less wholesome aspect. Okay, but if you are giving a broadly more positive view, then accordingly choose, as it were over here, a more positive comment and quotation as well. Okay, so that's what we have for today, at least. In terms of the foregrounding, basically just to remind us again. Apologies. Okay. So in terms of our foregrounding discussion today, right, you want to have a generic statement, and that's one possible opening to work it through. You want to have a narrative opening, or you want to have a quotation opening. So in terms of accessibility, I suggested earlier on, having a generic statement is the easiest. It can be done for any question with little preparation, but I would advise that where possible, you use a well-known incident, current event, link it to the question, that's the narrative foregrounding, or you can use a quotation opening to help you drive the discussion a bit more thoroughly. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a good understanding of what you can do, at least for the first 1 or 2 sentences in the introduction, as well as your essay writing. And in our next discussion, lesson number 5, we will look into the details of writing a positioning, which is the second part introduction, followed by in lesson 6, the thesis statement. And by then, you should have a good understanding of how the whole introduction for writing a good general paper essay or argumentative essay would come through. All right, so thank you so much, and I'll see you next time now. Have a good week ahead.